Right here, we are going to talk about matters to do with money laundering in the country and terrorism. And to have that discussion is Dr. Laxmana Kiptoo, who is a development expert and Director General, Public Benefits Organization Regulatory Authority. Welcome, sir. You are on Kenya's biggest conversation, that is the hot seat. But before we get to that, I would just want to take you to Mauritania, a beautiful country, a country that is rich in resources. What resources are we talking about? We're talking about copper, we're talking about oil, we're talking about iron ore. And this is what they are exporting and continue to push the economy and improve on the same. However, it is still being rated as being one of the poorest countries in the continent. And one would look at the resources they have and hope that the economy would be much better. But there is always hope with regard to that. But let's go to the proverb. He who goes up must come down. How would you interpret that?
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you for having me here. I would interpret that by saying that he who goes up must come down. Is that you've got to come to the level, if you've given a position of authority, then you've got to come down to the level of the people you serve, so that you are not there alone, so that you are able to be in touch with the people, you are able to be in touch to the ground. I don't know how to say about that. Yeah.
They say kwa ground mambo one is different, so you must know what the ground is saying.
Sure.
So that
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And as we just dive straight into the conversation now,
Yeah.
Terrorism, financing, and money laundering is a conversation in the country. The laws have been passed to be able to address these. Institutions have been put in place to address all these as well. But it is not just a Kenyan problem, it is a universal problem. So when we talk about money laundering and terrorism financing, especially using non-profit organization, what exactly are we looking at? How dire is the situation?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a conversation actually that we first of all have to understand from the FATF point of view, and we need to understand that what we are dealing with is enshrined in Recommendation 8 of FATF. Recommendation 8 talks about governments putting in place mechanisms to ensure that non-profit organizations are not used for terrorism financing, and all those measures that are put in place should be able to be, first of all, proportionate, and it should not inhibit the good works that NPOs carry out, the charitable works they do. Yeah, and so in Kenya, we've done an assessment. Our assessment of the NPO sector in Kenya, the risk is medium low. It's not very high. That's the report that was carried out last year across the country by government in collaboration together with the non-governmental organization, who we now refer to as in our context, public benefit organizations. Remember, we are in transition, and our NGOs, so to say, per se, in the country, now we are referring all of them as public benefit organizations, following the operationalization of the Public Benefit Organization Regulatory Act of 2013.
When you say the threat in the country is medium low,
Yes.
What does medium low mean? What are the other categories? Do we have extreme high? Do we have danger? Do we have extreme low? Do we have non-existent? So when you say medium low in the context of Kenya, what exactly does that mean, would be the question.
Thank you very much. Medium low means we are not immune, or we are susceptible to terrorism financing. That in Kenya, the NPO sector has been liberal for a very long time. You can rise up today in our country, get 5 people, get a constitution, get minute and you say you want to operate in Lamu. You want to carry out NGO activities, targeting the people of Lamu County, and you will approach government and you will go through the rigors of registration, which we do as an authority, and we will give you, by the fact that you are a Kenyan, you want to go out there, solicit for funds, carry out a public activity. When you go out there and seek funds, we will not control you. You will approach several donors, and there are donors out there, and they will give you the money. Some donors will tell you, yes, we are able to fund that activity. And because of our understanding of our people, there is, and with that goodwill, the intention, they will gladly receive the money and they will engage with the activity. But if it will continue, if the donor has an ulterior motive, and if the donor actually would want you to support Al-Shabaab activities or support people who are supporting Al-Shabaab, because that's our major threat in the country. The terrorism activities and attacks that we have been majorly from Al-Shabaab, And remember, we have moved away from profiling the Muslim or the Islamic community that they are, or the Somali community as Al-Shabaab. In Kenya right now, you can have a Kalenjin like me who is a member of Al-Shabaab. You can have someone from Western. You can have someone, so not necessarily a Muslim, not necessarily a Somali. So that is why we are saying it's low medium. Apart from Al-Shabaab and the ISIS people, you've had people that they've vanished, they've joined the ISIS area, and the numbers are low. So with that assessment that we carried out, we could confidently say, and that was a scientifically carried out study, that we are not, it is, the threat is not serious, that not all NGOs in the country are. But what we are now doing is, we are doing sensitization and awareness, which actually we are required to do as an authority, to inform all the NPOs in the country, all the BPOs in the country, that they should be aware that there is a possibility they can be used, because nothing is absolute. Yeah.
I mean, Kiptoo, does this extend to domestic terrorism? Because you've mentioned Al-Shabaab, you've mentioned ISIS. And the reason I ask that is just recently, Kenya's found itself in a situation where, for example, the president the other day said Ford Foundation was funding the Gen Zs on the streets to do what they were doing, in reference to now what later we saw as young people going to court under terrorism charges. Does this terror financing then extend to domestic terrorism?
If indeed it is proved that the damage they caused, if it was about sabotage, and if it is proven beyond reasonable doubt that a certain organization funded a group of people to cause a particular damage, or to target a specific economic activity, or to target specific institution. But from where we are, we have not, we cannot ascertain that from as an authority. Within the NPOs, we do not have any particular NPO that we are saying right now they are responsible for this.
But
from the authorities, point of view.
But what Okari is referring to is a statement that was made by none other than the President of the Republic at the time. So one would have hoped that the President had sufficient information and intelligence to support his allegations, you know. So at what point then does one sit and say, we consider these to be funding terrorism and these does not? Because remember, Kenyans we're talking about today that were taken to court were charged on terrorism charges. And remember, that statement came from the President saying Ford Foundation was the one who were funding these individuals who were charged with terrorism. How do you differentiate the same so that we do not lump people where they do not belong, and that those who are rightfully so found to be guilty are taken through the process and not playing politics?
Yes, I don't want to draw myself to that direction, possibly because of two reasons. Yeah. Number one, we've got INGOs in this country that operate under the host country agreements. So I'll not be competently able to talk about them. I will only competently talk about the BPOs or the NGOs that we regulate ourselves, you know. And also I'd be wading into an area where, you know, there are security organs in this country who would be in a position to speak about that, and because I was not private, let's not make it because that I can say that one is a political statement. But I know that the INGOs operating under host country agreements have rules and agreements that they need to abide to, which is a little bit different from the PPOs that we regulate from the authority.
All right. Well, we don't want to feign interfere.
Yeah.
However, because this authority also seeks to serve Kenyans.
Yes.
And in line with what Dennis is asking, it may help to maybe progressively to consider how much the authority could chime in terms of charges that are preferred against Kenyans in regard to purported terrorism acts. Because, of course, you are regulatory, you do control, you do observation. It may be helpful to maybe widen the scope so that we don't have also innocent Kenyans who are getting into what you'd call a civic space to agitate for democracy or otherwise, and then only to end up being charged with terrorism acts that are not necessarily within the profile of what a terrorism act may look like. That might be something to look into. However, I hear what you're saying, and it sounds very prudent that you are seeking to minimize like radicalization and recruitment into terror acts, which we need as a country for our own security and safety. But I'm wondering how perhaps we will be able to manage, from your perspective, some of these organizations coming in form of religious institutions. And you'll hear, I know the biggest profiling has been along the Muslim community. But you'll see installation or construction of masjid, schools, and those become, you know, the hotspots of recruitment. How do you sort of control or intervene when such cases are happening? If in my community they're setting up a masjid and we are not really sure where that is coming from.
Yeah. Again, that's with the religions is in the institutions. It's out of my purview. But what we are doing from the authority together with the NPOs is that right now we have an NPO working group comprising of ourselves, some investigative agencies, and the BBOs. In fact, the last 2 weeks we were in Machakos, and we've developed an assessment tool, which we are required by FATF to develop. Then number two, also we develop what's called the monitoring framework for us to be able to monitor activities of PBOs and NBOs, including religious activities, so that we don't wake up one morning and we have a shagahola kind of thing, you know. So that monitoring framework, together with the assessment tool, we will be validating it next week on Thursday, so that we'll now be able to number one is to be able to use it going forward together with the NPOs, because if you don't have an assessment tool, you cannot be able to pinpoint and say this particular religious group or this particular organization is engaged in terrorism financing when you do not have the measurement parameters. But number two, also now, what we are required is that the monitor. So beside the tool now, we have the monitoring framework, and the reason is twofold. Number one is that we are able to protect legitimate NPOs from carrying out the activities. But number two, also, we are able to observe the human rights and an organization that agitate for transparency and accountability and all that, so that we can be able to shield them. So it's twofold. We protect them and from abuse, and also we give them a platform to be able to engage in the activities. Yes.
To most Kenyans, money laundering is wash.
Wash, yes.
So what is money laundering?
And by the way, that is also an area that the recommendation 8 has not waded into so much, because money laundering is a process of using illicit, of turning over illicit money, that are acquired through illegal means. Then you need to clean them, and it has a process. You get the money in the country, and then you invest that money in legitimate businesses. Yeah. Then you now through a process called the layering, and that money that was illicit now generates revenue in income activity. You get money, build a mall. Once you build a mall, you rent shops, and you get your rent from the shops. And you have cleaned the money.
You see, Dr. When we talk about money laundering, but that would call for investigations that need to happen. When you talk about terrorism financing, there is investigation that needs to happen. And this as well needs to bring everyone on board. It includes Kenyans, just so they understand the intrigues on whoever is coming in their locale, in their spaces, to say, I'm here to offer aid, I am here to offer education, I'm here to offer jobs. I am here to ensure that I uplift you from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
And with this then would call for a multi-agency approach. So who else are you working with to ensure that investigations are done when it comes to matters to do with money laundering? Perhaps Parliament is involved. Who are you working with to ensure that you win, and it's not just a policy, that it is not just a directive that is with a certain authority, but that everyone, including Kenyans, are on board in addressing these issues?
Actually, thank you very much. The whole process of FATF and monitoring illicit flows currently is multi-sectoral. We have the banks, which are the regulators. Central Bank is there, CMA, asset recovery. We have DCI, we have NIS, we have the EACC. When the ICRG group actually meet, it is wider, it's multi-sectoral, including actually the latest people that we have on board is PAC members, members of the working group, national working group, and also the Law Society of Kenya. Yeah, so it is not, and that's why, as from the point of when we are only dealing with NPOs, but also all the other sectors we are together, include even when we were developing the tool that I mentioned all of last week, all of those representatives were there, including BRS, because they also regulate they also regulate the sector, and there are organizations that also do charity organizations there, even companies limited by guarantee. Yeah, so all of us are working together so that no one is left behind, and a good number of Kenyans, not from government in those areas that I've talked about, were involved. Yeah.
carries a security guard. In the sense that he's covered security for a very long time.
And I'm just listening to, and I'm remembering there was a time where a lot of forex bureaus were being used as channels of this money for terrorism. And several were actually shut down. I'm just curious at the moment, what are the industries that you can consider the highest risk zones or sectors for laundering money and being used as channels of also channeling this money for terror financing at the moment? There was a period when forex bureaus were being used a lot. You mentioned that a lot of NGOs and sometimes charitable organizations are used in this. But at the moment, what are the sectors that you're observing?
Including even real estates, real estates, casinos, and that is an area that the lawyers are still grappling with. How do we bring on? You are right, the casinos, the real estate, it can also be a channel. As we are focusing on the NPOs, non-profit organization, including, although not so much the CPO, the NPOs, the big organizations, the national and the international ones. It can be diverse, You cannot confine yourself to a particular sector.
Industry.
Yes. And that's why we are widening those, bringing on, but all those people, Yeah, when I talk about the Law Society of Kenya, for example, and I'd wish that you invite them to come also. That's also an area that's been widely used, and they are coming up with a framework on how they can be able to counter this, So, but just to confine myself to my area.
It's the NPOs.
It's the NPOs. That is what we are doing, and we are working closely together with all the NPOs in the country. We now have a platform, we have a forum where we talk together, and we are in these issues together. Last week, part 1, we were together with the civil societies. We had been invited by a group called the Civic Advisory Hub in Botswana, and we were together with Muhuri and several NPOs in the country, where we are advancing this within our sector, that we are saying we need to be careful of our donors. We need to be careful about the conditions that the donor would give you, that I'd want you to engage in this activity, and because when an organization is formed, it has its own objectives, it has its own area of scope. But at times, when you get a donor, you will easily tell you, could you please expand to this area? And because organizations need money, they will easily say, okay, we'll consider. And in the spirit of expanding your scope, expanding your mandate, you'll find yourself now engaging in those activities to please your donor, and to meet those conditions for you to attract more funding. Remember, the funding space has been shrinking. Remember, and that's why within the BPO authority, the Act now gives opportunities for NPOs so that they can be able to be sustainable. It gives them room for them to engage in business activities, income generating activities, so long as whatever will be accrued will be plowed back into the activities of the organization.
But that is assuming what you're saying, and it's very good, but that's assuming donor A is channeling funds to this agency. And it's within the legal channel. So there's money trail.
Yes.
So then, therefore, you're able then to track the source of funding, the organization itself,
Yeah.
what it stands for, and the activities that the money then is being spent on.
Yes.
Then that way you're able to try and pinpoint areas where you can say, okay, there is financing that is going to activities that are not very, very clear.
Yeah.
Then investigate and find out whether these are terror-related activities, and therefore finance is going there. But there's a counter-argument. And in today's age of AI, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
you also have criminals that have become very sophisticated in the sense that the use of technology then keeps changing every day. So today, you're talking about crypto.
Yeah.
You're talking about e-wallets,
Yeah.
blockchain. How ready are our regulators for these new technologies that keep emerging to fight financial crime, money laundering, and track terror financing? Because we know a lot of times government systems and regulators play catch-up.
Yeah.
So you have these criminals who are 10 steps ahead and they're thinking, wait a minute, I don't even need a registered company. Get a briefcase company, shell company, whatever it is that you're going to get. But then instead of moving this money through the ordinary channel, through the banks, as we know them, let's use Bitcoin. Yes, let's use any form of crypto
Blockchain,
coins.
yeah.
And therefore, it's then difficult then to track. So how are regulators adapting to these changes?
We are trying our best, and we are actually adapting, because you are spot on in saying that the criminals actually are changing tact. And that's why also regulators need to be versatile, they need to be dynamic for us to be able to do that. Even the banks are equally the same. And that is why we are trying to digitize ourselves, so that we are no longer depending on the manual register. So we've got a program that we would want to digitize, and so that we will be able to say, if we are your regulator, we've got to be able to see you. We can be able to see the activities. We've got to be able to see your funding, and not necessarily to control, but to just make sure that everything that you are doing is legit. So regulators, we are trying, and we are having a conversation as a regulator, so that we can now even work together. I can be able to know what BRS are doing. They can be able to know what we are doing. Companies limited by guarantees, and also within government. Right now, we are also trying to see and bring the donors on board. There is a conversation with the Office of the Deputy President where we are trying to get to know what is called off-budget funding. Because there are our organizations go to embassies. They get funds from the embassies. They go and those embassies and donors, they will give them money, and they will record that they've given Kenya government a certain amount of money. Ministry of Treasury Finance, they will also be recording and say, because now they are not aware of that funding, and we are not aware, the figures that we attribute to a certain donor is different. Why? It's because the donor gave those money to an NPO directly. We are having a conversation where we will be asking the donors, before they give money to NPOs, they will inquire from us, number one, if they are registered, so that we know they have given money to this organization. If I am the regulator, I'll be able to know, so that when they file their annual returns, for example, and when we do the sector report, we can be able to say, this is the contribution of the sector to the Kenya development, and that will go a long way in terms of having the checks and balances, and you will not be able to benefit if you are not in that framework.
There is something that happened in the country, which is in February this year, where the country was grey-listed, FATF grey-listing.
Yes.
And that has put Kenya as one of an avenues that is highly susceptible to be misused by those who are financing terrorism and money laundering. Yeah. So being grey-listed, what does that mean for the country in international spaces?
It means we are not going to be trusted. And I was telling the NPO sector, there are countries right now that, and their donors, that they are not very keen to fund us because of that greylisting, and that's what we are battling in right now. The SCRG process that I talked about is that we are required to report on quarterly basis on the measures that the country is putting in place. To be able to monitor that. And greylisting is not a good thing. It's not, because it means all the donor countries are shrinking their they will be giving you a little money to say, put your house in order. And it's all the sectors. And it's affecting all the sectors. Government and also the non-government. That's why we are in this process. Other countries are putting in place mechanisms, and they are removing from that grey list. About 2 weeks ago, Nigeria was removed. South Africa was removed, and I think the big economies in Africa right now, Kenya is the only one which is there. Although we were there before and we were removed, now they put us back. Yeah, so we are hopeful that the issues that the FATF group wanted us to address been addressed. Like, one of the things that I had said is that we need to operationalize this act. Remember, the authority I'm heading was just NGO Coordination Board. One of the requirements was we operationalize, which this government has since operationalized it. Right now, we've just finished the regulations of operationalizing that. We have actually handing it over to Parliament. We took the regulations through the public participation, and all the sectors were involved. We had a validation last week at Mozambique, and all the NPO sectors gave it a thumbs up. Now we've given those. Now the mutual evaluation looks at those things. If the law is there, has it been operationalized? If it has been operationalized, do you have the tools that I was telling you about? So I am sure when we will go for the mutual evaluation, it's called the face-to-face mutual evaluation in January by FATF, they will be able to tick the what is called immediate outcome number 10, which covers the NPOs, because we have largely addressed those issues. What will be remaining, and the things that the other agencies are doing, is about the number of investigations that has been done, the number of recoveries by asset recovery, how many cases were prosecuted, were investigated and prosecuted, Those are the indicators that they use to say Kenya are doing very well.
So now
and we are, I can assure you that we are doing very well, and hopefully when we do mutual evaluation in 2026, we are hopeful that Kenya may be removed from the grey list.
So pundits may argue that we are coming in albeit too late on this regulation. Because one, we've been grey listed and the country has suffered greatly because of the terrorism financing. Although it's a good effort and we do hope that to advance that. However, I want to look at the flip side of the regulation. There is always the concern and the fear of overreaching, because governments are known to use instruments or agencies such as yours, to curtail other activities in the society, in the community where these governments are domiciled, in this case Kenya, to try and curtail activities that may be coming out to do civic education to Kenyans that may cause an uprising against the same regime. So what are the safeguards for us as the public, even as you proceed, which we support, to establish the authority, what are the safeguards that when you overreach, we can say no?
I think our constitution, the Kenya constitution, is a safeguard. If you do a comparative analysis of what happens within our region, I think Kenyans, we are angels. You know, even what's happening with our neighborhood, you know, we are doing very well. The freedom of speech in our country is good. You know, the freedom to go to court. The courts are there, and they are doing an amazing job. The other oversights, including Parliament, before we take our regulation to Parliament will require something called the regulatory impact assessment. How does the regulations impact on those, which we've since carried out and we've put it. So those checks and balances are there. And I don't think where we have, and you know, the regulations are born from the Act. And our Act was actually largely driven. In fact, it was formed and it was a private members bill, which was by the civil society, and we've not departed from there. Maybe so I want to give an assurance within to the NPO sector, that government does not have any intention of gagging or impeding on the activities of NPOs, but rather these regulations and this act is an enabler for the sector to be able to get organized. Remember, the act is a continuation of the NGO Act of 1990. But now this is more advanced, and it is Kenyans who actually came up with it. You know, Kenyans are very good in terms of coming up with the rules that govern themselves. So I can tell you, the act is progressive, the regulations are good, and it was actually the civil society themselves actually went through it, close by close, and right now they gave us a thumbs up that this is a working document. So it is not us as an authority who actually have been pushing for this, but it's a product of our collaboration and partnership together with the sector.
Well, I believe you'll be under so much scrutiny because we have the Land Act that has been amended, and Kenyans are really privy to that. So it will be interesting to see how that develops. But I wanted to make a follow-up question. You mentioned we are focused on financing of terrorism, but you know we have so many other agencies who come into the country and they advance other sorts of agendas that are not necessarily the terror by nature. It could be like we've seen, or rather we've had, they call it human rights, but you'll hear the cases of LGBTQ, same-sex marriage, which could be contrary to our constitution and our cultural practices. Is that within your scope?
If there is an organization engaging in those activities, then that they are saying they will be focusing particularly on that, then it will be within my scope. But if not, if they will register themselves as a society, then it will be under BRS. It will not be under myself. You know, we have different regimes. It is only that that diversity, and also it is a mechanism. One of the checking mechanism is that where I am as an authority, I don't superintend everybody. There are people who are registered under BRS, some under companies limited by guarantee, and now myself, and there are also those ones who are under CBOs, you know, under Ministry of Social Labor. So even having a diverse registration regimes in itself is a safeguard mechanism, so that we are not in one place and we're saying there's nothing that we can be able to do. So that one I can assure you that if indeed an organization engaging in that will be under my scope, then we'll be able to regulate.
You know, we talk about terrorism, financing terrorism in the country. We talk about money laundering, and with Kenya being greylisted, something shows that we've not been doing something right. And with that then comes to speak about successes that we've seen, what it will take for us to get off that grey list. So what are some of the successes that you have seen, and how are we working towards ensuring that Kenyans are part of this conversation? Because where Kenyans are not involved, they will always be at the extreme end where they're being taken advantage of and they do not know about it. How are we involving Kenyans in this conversation in the spirit of public participation, not just about the organizations themselves, but Kenyans themselves, and successes as well that we can see? And when you find that I am being used to fund terrorism, what do you do? What happens next?
We are engaging in the different sectors I talked about. They are engaging stakeholders in within that particular spectrum. Me, myself, I've said I'm engaging with the civil society groups, NPOs, who are ordinary Kenyans. They are not part of government, The Law Society of Kenya are engaging the members of the public within their spectrum. The BRS are engaging Kenyans on their own again. So, and Kenyans are being given an opportunity to engage us in the several regulations and the laws that we are having. When you see the whistleblowers, the Witness Protection Agency, where Kenyans are coming out and say, we have identified something and we need protection for us to be able to flag this out. So I want to call upon all Kenyans in whatever sphere they are working on to be aware that if we do not speak out about a fight that we are seeing, the final result is that it will affect us as a country. The issue of greylisting as it is, we are saying it does not only affect government, it affects every Kenyan. Every Kenyan. The other time when when the Kenya government, when we were saying our passport is prone to manipulation, when now government was putting in effort and to say we need to have a tamper-proof passport, for example, it was because if we didn't put up that security features and all that, and that mechanism, every time you would go somewhere, someone like Okari, they will say, no, it's not a Kenyan. It might be a Nigerian using a Kenyan passport. So what we are saying is that we need to be vigilant to guard our space. The government will protect. We are there to protect our space, so that we ensure that Kenyans can be able to be free to engage in all activities that they would want to do. And then, provided it does not now, whatever you do does not affect the security of another person. Yeah.
You earlier said, in reference to money laundering, some of these emerging threats are also coming through real estate, where you have a lot of boom in the real estate. And we've had guests here who've talked about actually how the money laundering trail is done. And you also alluded to the fact that you're also working closely with banks and you're having conversations with banks. And I'm thinking, a lot of this financial institutions, are they really doing a good KYC job? Because what we then tend to see, you hardly see somebody walking in giving a contractor gunia ya pesa. A bank has to be involved somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to then find out from you. Have we reduced some of these financial institutions, not all, to just tick boxing agencies where I'm bringing money, you're not questioning where it's coming from, you're not doing a due diligence, but provided you're bringing business to the bank, then you just tick the box and the exercise is complete. Therefore, then, it means it's easy for somebody to walk into some of these financial institutions and launder money and move this money to do any
I'm not a banker and I'm not speaking for the bank, but it may be true. There is a possibility. And that is why the Kenya Bankers Association, the CBK as a regulator, and all the banks is actually are right into this conversation of regulations. You know, that is why ARA is there. You know, asset recovery. You know, it is a possibility. It is a possibility that can be able to happen. So, CBK as a regulator and all the banks are part of this conversation. All the investigators, all the investigating agencies in this country, DCI, ESCC, ODPP, are in this conversation. I think the only people now that we might need to have on are actually have not seen the judiciary being part of the conversation in the face-to-face that we had. But all the people I've mentioned are part and parcel of the National Steering Working Group. And also the coordinator, our coordinator actually is the FIU, the Financial Reporting Center, FRC in our case. Yeah. So all those people you mentioned are there. And that's why nowadays in Kenya, part of this is if you move 1 million shillings, 2 million shillings, you will hear that you've been told, were you expecting some money? Yes. From where? For what purpose? You know, provide that documentation. If currently you move millions of shillings in our banks, there are high chances that you will not get that money.
Dr.
Without providing evidence, you know.
You know, Dr. There is a clear way how that money is being cleaned up. Let me just paint it for you.
Yeah.
We see, and I'll go straight into the works, the political class.
Yeah.
We see every day the political class walking around with millions and millions of shillings. You know, we politicians have showed up for a certain public engagement. There is an NGO that is doing something. Donation, 5 million shillings is there. Go do that with your job. And we talk about you cannot move 5 million shillings through the banks, but we can move 5 million shillings through activities supporting football tournaments here and there. And one sitting back would say that right there is how we are cleaning money. Just what is the authority doing to ensure that such movements, that such initiatives that is in clear plain sight are things that you handle, you address, that will help us get out of the grey list?
That's not within my purview, and I now realize why this is a hot city. And I wish you could be able to call some of the politicians that splash money around and ask them about that. But what we are talking about is that we have regulations and mechanisms in place, legit. And that's what we are looking at. But these other ones, I'll not be able to tell you that's money laundering or not. But you are the ones calling them. Call them and put them in the hot seat, and then for them to be able to defend themselves and say where they got the money and what's the reason.
You know, the reason why I'm bringing that is because you see,
and I'm not a politician myself.
When we talk about regulations and what needs to go to Parliament, you know, it is the same individuals that are seen walking around with huge sums of money that are expected to then pass regulations that will come to control this. So if they walk around with a suspect or a speck in their eye, perhaps there's a problem there that would make it difficult for your authority to fight anti-terrorism, financing and money laundering. Perhaps it's a conversation that needs to be extrapolated for everyone to be in this conversation. That is Dr. Laxmana Kiptoo, I beg your pardon, Laxmana Kiptoo, who is a security expert, a development expert as well, who we've been having that conversation from PBO, and something that we need to talk about because terrorism financing and money laundering continues to affect the country.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.